Okay, we are back. The first video worked, so we're gonna plow right through and keep on going. Okay, so let's start our example. So we're gonna do a couple things with jQuery. We're gonna learn some of the basics, some of the raw stuff, and then I'm gonna show you how to incorporate it into some of the things that we've been doing. So for example, so I showed you when I showed you form validation, I was using alert boxes just for demonstration purposes. And I've told you never ever use alert boxes. So now I'm going to show you what you should actually do, right? Remember, only use alert boxes when we're just testing, when we want something quick, right? We don't use alert boxes in our actual design. So I showed you the wrong way. It's only right that I should show you really what you should do. So again, you can do what I'm going to show you. You can do without jQuery. You can just use raw JavaScript like we've been doing. But for the stuff that we're going to do, there isn't really a reason to do it that way. You're just making things more difficult for yourself. So you should, if you can use jQuery, you should. So here's what we're going to do. We need as per usual, we need our index page, so index HTML, okay? And we'll create our style sheet. So we're just creating all our files in advance, okay? And let's create our JavaScript file. So we'll call it jQuery demo.js. Okay, so you should have 3 files. Okay, our typical HTML and CSS, and also this new jQuery demo file. Okay, so let's open up our index file. We'll open it in, I think I have Dreamweaver on this computer. Let's open it up in Dreamweaver. Oops. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try the old version. Dreamweaver CS5 is just fine. Okay, so I'm going to drag my files over here, like so. Okay, so we have our files here, right? Index, and they're all empty because we just created empty files. So let's open this up in a browser because we're going to need to do that eventually. We might as well get ahead of ourselves. So here's our empty index file, HTML file that has nothing in it. So let's start, let's fill this out. So, whoops. Of course, we need our HTML tags, okay? And then inside, as per usual, we're gonna have our head. This should all be review for you guys. If this is new, then you have some review to do for yourself. Okay, so we have our body, we have our head tag. Let's just put something in here for now, just so we can see something. Okay, so let's say this is a paragraph. Actually, well, let's do lorem ipsum because we're going to do some things that it's better if we can see lots of text. Okay, so let's get lorem ipsum in here. So remember, lorem ipsum is just some gobbledygook that looks like English. So we'll copy that and let's paste that into our paragraph here. Okay, and we shall refresh. Let's refresh our page here. Did we do this? No. Where's our demo page? Okay, back here. Refresh. Okay, so there is our text. So the first thing we need to do is we need to include jQuery within our HTML page. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. Okay, so let's go back to my notes here. Let's see. So there are 2 ways we can do it. We can add jQuery to our page. So one is we can download the actual file, the jQuery file, and it's just a JavaScript file. We could download that and include it in our local files here. So the jQuery file would actually be on our web server, wherever that is. So we would have let's do that. We can download it. So we have to go to jQuery. Okay. Download jQuery, second link. Excellent. So we could go here, and so there's jQuery 2, jQuery 1. I'm not sure. jQuery, does not support. jQuery has the same, but does not support. So if we use jQuery 2, we're going to lose support for Internet Explorer 6, 7, and 8. Which again, that's a judgment call. A lot of people still use 6, 7, and 8. I mean, I work at CIBC, and we use Internet Explorer 8. So even though it's old, there's still a lot of people using it. So there are a couple of options. You could look at the compressed version or the uncompressed version. So look at this. This is all JavaScript code, but it's been compressed by a software program that makes it so we've taken away readability for shortness of code. So we can look here. This is the code. It's a little more readable. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to make sense of this. I'm just sort of showing you. So this is the jQuery library. So someone has written all this code, all this JavaScript code. So look, we can make some sense of this. We know about JavaScript, so we know what this is. This is an if statement, and here we have an else. Okay, here we have a function. We learned about functions. Here we have a variable, right? Var offset. What else? We learned about loops. Let's see if we can find a loop. Let's do a search for for. No, these are all in the comments. Do we have any for loops in here? Oh, here's a for loop. This is a different type. Well, no, this is a for loop. Yep, this is a loop here. Okay, so you should, obviously I don't expect you to make sense of this. Even I wouldn't spend time really going through here unless you wanted to make changes to jQuery, but that's definitely not something I'd recommend. So, just to understand, so these are basically the same thing. They do the same thing. And so on your server, you'd probably, if you were going to store jQuery on your server, you would probably want to store this because this file is smaller. And so for every person that visits your page, you're going to save a little bit of bandwidth if that's super important to you. So that's one way we could do it. So we could just save this file. Can we just do like this? Save as. Right, we could save this file into our example. So we could just save it there. And now in our directory, we would have this. So what I actually recommend, let's do this now while we're starting. We'll do good practice. So remember, you should put your style in one folder. Usually I call that CSS, so I'm going to put that there. And then your JavaScript should be in another folder. I would maybe either call it JS or JavaScript. So we're going to do that now, just to have good practice right from the beginning. So now we could make a reference to this jQuery file. That's one thing we can do. The other thing we can do is use what's called the CDN. So remember when we included web fonts in our web page? So we had to go to Google and include a little bit of code that would basically it would talk to Google servers, and it pulled the font from Google. So we can do the same thing with pretty much the same thing with jQuery in that, so we don't have to have the actual file on our servers. We can just link to the file on either jQuery servers or Google servers. There are a lot of people. So Microsoft has one, you can see here. There's a few different options that we have. Okay, so what we could do is if we want to reference, let's say jQuery 1.1.0, we would just copy all of this. Okay. And we would go to Dreamweaver and we would paste it into our head, right? And I'm going to change this. We're going to change this to http:// okay? So just that little link there installs jQuery. So now we have access to all these jQuery functions that allows us to use jQuery, okay? So the other thing we need to do is, so we have our main jQuery file that we're now referencing through the CDN, but we also have our own jQuery file, or JavaScript file that we're going to have jQuery functions in. So we have to make a link to that as well. Why didn't that do that automatically? Okay, so what we need to do is, put our folder name, then / and what did we call it? jQuery demo, I believe. JavaScript. Let's just double check that file name. jQuery demo.js. Okay, that seems right. So let's go into JavaScript, into Dreamweaver. Okay, what's going on here? What are you thinking? Not responding. Okay, hopefully this is just temporary. What are you doing here, Dreamweaver? Uh-oh. Dreamweaver's not cooperating. Well, we might just have to kill it. Dreamweaver. Okay. So, unfortunately, Dreamweaver has let us down. Let's open it back up. Okay. And let's pull this. So we'll pull our jQuery files back, or our JavaScript files, and we'll go back here, and we need our index file. And oh shoot, is it trying? You know what I think it's trying to do? It's trying to connect to. It's trying to connect to the CDN. Okay, let's close this for a second. So what I think I'm going to do is we're going to open this. What I'm going to do is actually do the local version. So instead of, let's go here, jQuery example.js. So I'm going to copy this. It's my file name. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here. So instead of accessing the server, which is seemingly crashing Dreamweaver, okay. So now let's save. So now I'm willing to bet if we open this in Dreamweaver, it's not going to crash now. So let's open up Dreamweaver. Okay. Go over here. And what do we want to do? We want to open up our index file. Aha, see? So I think Dreamweaver was trying to be smart, and it was having trouble connecting to the CDN. So we'll just use the local version. It's really just, you know, the reason, there are a couple of reasons to use the CDN, and I guess you're saving a little bit of bandwidth. But if your CDN, let's say for example, if a server goes down that you're connecting to, then your page might not work correctly. So you may want to host it locally. Then you know, you can be, if your web page is working at all, then the jQuery will work as well. But then you have to serve up the jQuery file with your own bandwidth. So, but again, that's not really a big concern anymore. Bandwidth is pretty cheap. So yeah, we should be fine just hosting it locally here. So now let's also open up our JavaScript files. So we'll go back here, and like I said, I always like to test just to make sure that my files are working. So I'm going to refresh this, and here we go. So our JavaScript's working. We don't quite know if our jQuery is working, but we're going to get started on that right now. Okay. So let's see here. What's the first thing that we want to do? So actually, let's go back to my notes for a second. So we've installed jQuery now. That's our first step. So let's talk a little bit about how we use jQuery syntax. Okay. So jQuery syntax is actually, it's quite clever. It's almost a mixture of what we've learned in CSS and what we've learned in JavaScript. It's combining these technologies in a way that makes it a little bit easier to create our application. Okay, so the most basic part of any jQuery command is the $sign. Okay, whenever you see the $sign, that is the shortcut for, you know, jQuery. We are now using jQuery. So when it sees the $sign, it knows, okay, now we're using the jQuery library. So, you know, you could do something like this, jQuery, but that's long, right? We don't want to, and we're trying to save code. So the developers of jQuery have just used the $sign. So any jQuery function, any jQuery command is going to start with the $sign. So that's a given, always $sign. If you see the $sign, we're using jQuery. Okay, then a jQuery statement always has two, other than the $sign, so that's always there, but then we also have always two parts separated by this dot. Okay, so on the left side of the dot is our selector, and that's basically we're selecting element HTML elements. So remember when we looked at let's see, do I still have that up? So when we looked at the JavaScript form validation, remember that big long this here. Remember this is how we had to access. We wanted to access our form called fname, right? So we had to do this big long line and put it in a variable here. So that was how we accessed the element, right? This big long JavaScript function command, right? We had to stick it in a variable. But now all we have to do is we do a short little command that's based in CSS syntax, and we'll take a look at that in detail in a minute. But it makes it really, really easy to select bits, different aspects of your web page. Okay. Then on the right side of the command is the action. So it's always a two-part thing with jQuery. What are we selecting, and what are we doing to that thing that we're selecting? Right? So for example, here's an example. One of the most basic things we can do to any HTML element is to hide it, right? It makes it go away so that you don't see it anymore. Okay? So for example, here there are a couple of ways, there are many ways to access elements, but here's an example of the three sort of main ways. So see, we have in our brackets, then we have double quotes, and then inside we have a P, and here we have dot test, and here we have number sign test. So that the dot, this should look familiar to you. This is a lot like how we select elements in CSS, right? We can select elements all paragraphs, or we can select, what are these, right? These are when we select classes, and then number signs, they are IDs, right? So there are three ways to select, or at least three ways. There are many more, but there are three main ways. So what we can do, let's see here. Here's a slide on the selectors. Okay, so just as I said, it's based on the CSS selectors. So that makes it really easy. We've already learned this CSS technology, and now we can leverage that knowledge in JavaScript, which we couldn't really do before. Okay, so, and remember, all type of selectors in jQuery start with the $sign and then parentheses or brackets. Okay, so the first type of selection that we can do is when we want to select all P elements on a page. Okay, so let's say we want to hide all the P elements. So what we would do is just put P, just like we would do in JavaScript, right? So, or in CSS, I mean. So if we went here, and so let's let's make a link to our CSS file, right? So let's just get some of that code here. So we got link. Let's copy that in here. Okay, and our we have it in CSS, and what did we call it? Style sheet, I think, right? Style sheet. Okay, so let's say let's go. Where's our style sheet? Open up our folder here. Okay, we're opening up our CSS. I'm going to drag it in here to open it up. Okay, so, if we want to access all P's, we just say P, right? And then we give it two brackets, and then we can do something to the P. So we could say something like, let's say background color red. Okay, and this will happen to all P's, right? So let's go back here. Where's our example? And we have our background, our red background. And if we were to put in another paragraph, go back to our index and just copy this and have a separate paragraph. Okay. Then we have two paragraphs. And again, because we've accessed all paragraphs, then all paragraphs are going to be styled that way. And it's the exact same thing with jQuery. So for example, this command right here will hide all the paragraph tags in your page. Okay, so let's do that. But the first thing we have to do before we get to that, I don't think I have a slide on the ready function. Oh, here we go. Okay, so one thing that we have to do. So remember I said when our page loads, it loads from the top down, right? And so, oh, I didn't close that. There we go. And so basically it'll load jQuery, and then it will go into this file. So we could even see how when we first loaded the page, no, that's not true. Okay, so if in our JavaScript file, if we tried to access, let's say this paragraph in this file, it wouldn't know what we're talking about because these elements haven't been loaded yet, right? The browser loads everything from top down. And so if we go in here and try and do something and manipulate our paragraphs, it won't work because we'll be trying to manipulate something that hasn't happened yet. So what we need to do is we need to use something called the ready function. Okay, so what we want to do is prevent jQuery code from running before the document is finished. Okay, so and we want to do that for a couple of reasons, because if we don't, we could get right down here, we could try and hide an element that's not yet created yet, or maybe we're trying to get the size of an image, but the image hasn't loaded yet. So that's not going to work, right? It's just your website won't work. So what we need to do is we need to use the ready function. So remember, a function is a block of code that runs at a certain time. So this is a specific function that will only run once we've hit here, the final tag, we've loaded everything, then boom, the ready function will be run. So we can do that. Let's comment out this alert. And so what I'm going to do is put in the ready function. So we're going to use jQuery to do this. We can actually do this in JavaScript, but I want to do it in jQuery because that's what we're learning about. So we want to select our document, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it, I want to assign a function to the ready function. So we're saying when the document is ready, we're going to run this block of code, okay? So then we type in function, okay, because we're telling it that we're going to be creating a function. We give it 2 brackets, okay, and then an open curly brace. And then we're going to go down here. We're going to close that curly brace. We're going to close the parentheses, and we're going to put in a semicolon, okay? So what that means is anything, so this is the ready function. Ready function. So anything in here will only run once the entire web page is loaded, okay? And we want to do that because we don't want to try and manipulate HTML elements that haven't been loaded yet. So let's just make sure that our jQuery is working. So we'll put an alert box in here, okay? Okay, let's try refreshing our page now. Okay, so we still have an alert. So, but technically the alert is being loaded at a different point, even though we don't see that. It is, but we'll see the difference that it makes in a minute when we look at a couple more examples. Okay, so what are some things we can do with jQuery? Okay, so like I said, one of the easiest things to do is simply hide something, right? So what do we want to hide? Let's hide all paragraphs. And I mean, this is going to look a little silly because it's just we're going to have a blank page. But we'll do some more interesting things in a minute. So again, how do we use jQuery? So we always start with the $, always, whenever we want to do a jQuery function. And then the first part of our jQuery statement is always the selector, right? And we want to select all P elements, all the paragraph elements in our HTML page. So we do that almost exactly the same way we do that in CSS. So we just say P. So we're now going to select all P's, and we can do something to P's. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide all P's. Okay? So now let's refresh our page. And there we go. It's hidden. So even though the paragraphs were loaded, if I comment this out and we go back here, they're there. They are there. It's just that after the fact, after everything has been loaded, so let's do this so we can see the difference. I'm going to put an alert box here. So the alert box freezes the running of the code, right? So if the code after the alert won't continue until I press OK. So let's load it. So see, our paragraphs are there. Then I press here. Boom, they disappear. Okay. So let's try hiding only one paragraph. Okay. So how would we do that? Well, we would do it the same way as if we wanted to style only one paragraph a certain way. So let's call this paragraph, we're going to give it an ID. Let's call it green. Okay. And in our style sheet, let's restyle it. So we'll say $, green, and then we have our brackets, and let's make the background color of this one green. Oops. Okay, let's just unhide this for a second. We'll just get rid of this for a second. What am I missing here? What did I do? Green. P green. I link the style sheet. Oh, I spelled background wrong. Okay. Let's try it now. There we go. So now we have one green and one red. So let's go back to our JavaScript file, and instead of selecting all P's, so we could go here in the CSS, we could copy this. That's the ID that we want to access, and let's put that instead of P's, which means all P's, we're going to select only things with ID green. So let's go back here and let's refresh, and there we go. We've hidden our green. Okay? Same thing with a class. So let's go back to our HTML. We'll copy this paragraph again, and let's call this class equals red. Okay, and we'll copy this. Okay, and so let's edit our CSS. So again, instead of changing all P's, let's do the class. So how do we do that? We say dot red. Okay, let's refresh that. Okay, so now we have two red. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. So instead of $, green, we're going to say dot red. And what will happen is, so now we've hidden the two red paragraphs, and now we have the green paragraph. Okay, so those are the examples of kind of the three main ways we can select elements, right? We can select all elements of a certain type. We can select IDs, and we can select classes. And there are more ways to select elements, and I invite you to research, but I'm going to leave it at those three. Using those three, you can do more or less what you need to do. There are some more advanced ways of selecting elements, but we're just going to leave it at that for the time being. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to get into event handling. Okay, so like I said, events are things that occur on your web page. So they can be automated events. So for example, ready, that's an event. That's something that happens when the page has been loaded, right? And so then the browser automatically knows, and it automatically runs this ready function. Okay, there are other things like on load, right? So when a page first loads, or maybe you can detect when a browser is closed. So if a browser is closed, that throws an event. Or when people move their mouse around the page, that throws events. Or when people click on things, that causes an event to trigger. So what we can do is we can assign certain things to happen when these events happen. Okay. So the first thing I want to do, I want to create my own button. I'm going to make my own button. We can make anything into a button if we want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a div tag. Okay, a div tag. And I'm going to close that div tag. Okay. And let's give this a ID. We'll call it button1. Okay. And inside we'll put some text, press me, something like that. Okay. So let's have a look at that. Okay, there's our button. It doesn't look very buttony right now because we need to style it. So let's go over to our style sheet. And what was it, an ID? Yes, so we're going to use the number sign or the pound sign. So number, what did I call it? Button. And then we have our open and close. So we'll make the width, what should we make it? 100 pixels. And height. These are, buttons are the type of thing that you probably want to, I mean, if anything is going to be using absolute sizing, probably your button is going to be it. Okay, so height, then we need border style. Where's border style? Okay, and we'll do that as solid. Okay, and also border, was it thickness? No, border width. Width, I believe, right? Border width. Let's make it 2 pixels. And border color, let's make that red. Okay, let's see how that looks. Refresh. What's going on? What happened? Did we mess up somewhere? Oh, what did I mess up? Okay, let's go back to here. Oh, button 1. I see. Okay, button 1, button 1. There we go. So that looks a little more like a button. Okay. Let's try. Can we get the V align? So we'll do vertical align. Vertical align. Let's make it in the middle. Okay. And what's that gonna do? Vertical align. No, it's not working. Why isn't that working? It should work. Middle sub text bottom. It should work. And let's do text align. That'll be center at least. We can get that working. Okay, how come the vertical align's not working? Not working. Why not? Vertical align. Oh, I think we might have to make it inline block. Let's see if that works. Nope. Okay, what we need to do is a little hack. We're going to make the height, the line height of the text equal to the height of our button. And then if we go over here and we refresh, then we have a text with that's in the center of our button. Okay, another thing that I want to do is we're going to use a fairly new, this is new to CS3, is we're going to use border radius, and we're going to make that 10 pixels. So let's have a look here. There we go. So now we have a nice little rounded button. Okay, but it still doesn't really do anything. We click it. So you know the click event for this element is running. It is firing, but we haven't assigned anything to happen when that event fires. Okay, so what we have to do is go back to Dreamweaver, go back to our demo. Okay, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be our first event handling function. So we need to select, right? Remember, all jQuery statements, well, first they start off with the $sign, and then the first thing we need to do, we want to select the element that we want to attach an event handler to. So obviously we want to make something happen when we click our button, right? So what element do we want to pick? We want to pick our button element. So how could we pick it? So we could select all div tags, but then in the future, you know, we're going to have more div tags in our layout, and we obviously don't want everything to function like a button in our web page. So we'll use the ID. So how do we use IDs again? We go back here. So quote quote, and then we use the $ and button1. Okay. So now what we're going to say is we're going to say when we click the button. So we're accessing the click event handler of our element with an ID of called button. So similarly to here, so how we're giving a function to run when the ready event is triggered, now we're going to give it a function to run when the click event of a single element is run. We're going to run a function. So we need to say function, and then two open and close brackets, and then we're going to have our opening brace, should be different, squiggly brace, and our closing brace, and our closing parentheses, and then semicolon. Okay, and now what we're going to do, we're going to put this hide function. So we're still going to select our red paragraphs, and we're still going to hide, but it's only going to happen when we click on our button. So let's save it and go back to our page, and now if we refresh, so we have 3 paragraphs, okay? And now if I click this, whoa, where'd they go? They were hidden, right? They've been hidden. So let's try it again. Yep, okay, pretty cool, right? So again, we could change this from red to, I think was it an ID? Yeah, so we'll change this to $ green, and let's try this again. So now when we refresh, now the green one goes away. Okay, so hide. So the other thing we could do, so let's create a second button. So obviously we can do the the opposite of hide, which is show. So let's create another button right here. We'll call it button 2, and let's actually give it a class. We're going to give both buttons, because we want all buttons to look the same, right? So we can copy this class into multiple buttons, and let's go back to our JavaScript here. So we're going to get rid of this. We're going to get rid of button 1. So we want to style all the buttons in the same way. Okay, so if we go back here now, oh wait, what did I forget here? So button, oh, okay, there's that. And, oh, because it's a class, I need to have a dot. Okay, so let's go back here. And, okay, why is only 1 working? Because, oh, see how the coloring is all wonky? So coloring's good. Oh, and then suddenly it's all blue. See, I forgot a quotation mark there. Okay, let's go back. And there we go. Now we have 2 buttons. Okay, so let's call this hide, and let's call this show. Hide and show. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our jQuery. We're going to copy this, because basically we want the same structure. I'm going to tab this over, and we're going to say button 2, and here we'll say green hide, and here we're going to change this to show. Okay, hide and show. So we'll go back here and we'll refresh, and here we go, hide, show, hide, show, hide, show. So now we're really starting to create an interactive page, right? We started with the forms to give our web pages, you know, some sort of interactivity, and now we're starting to, you know, see technologies that really give us some power, that really allow us to make our web pages come alive. Okay, So hide and show, those are pretty typical. Let's look at some more interesting ones. Let's look at fade. Okay, fade, and so actually, well, it would be fade out and fade in. Okay, and actually fade out takes a number of different parameters. So we could give it, we could say fade out slow. We could use the actual word slow, and then we could also give it an exact time in milliseconds. So we could say fade in at 3000 milliseconds, which is 3 seconds. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so that faded out, and now let's show it, and that faded in. Okay, let's make it even slower. Let's make it 6000. That'll go really slow. So we've hidden it, and let's show it. There we go. Okay. Oh, no quotes. Sorry. I just thought that looked a little odd. So now we hide and show. See how 6 seconds? Ooh, that looks nice. Okay, pretty cool, right? So we can fade in and fade out. We could also, so let's create a third button. So we don't need 2 buttons to do everything. Let's create a third button. So again, we're going to leave it as class button because we want all of our buttons styled the same way. I'm going to change this to ID3. So now I can, in jQuery, I can specifically reference button 3. So I'm going to copy this. Okay. Change this to button 3. And so now what we can do is instead of either fading in or fading out, we're going to fade toggle. And let's change this to 3000. 6000 was a little slow. So now on our third button, let's actually change the text to toggle. Okay? So now we're going to go back here and I'm going to refresh. So now let's try, so we still have our hide and show. But we can also click our toggle. So if it's hidden, oh, what's going on here? Oh, there we go. Just a little delayed because of this 6 seconds. Okay, so I clicked it a couple of times. So let's click it again. There we go. Goes away. And now it's gone. So let's click toggle again and it'll put it back. So see how when we hide it or fade it away, it doesn't just disappear. It's almost as if we've fully removed it, because notice when we toggled this and faded it out, notice how everything jumped up. So that's as if that no longer exists. So everything around it acts as if that element doesn't exist anymore, even though it's still technically there. It's just the browser is pretending that it's not there. Okay? Okay, fade in, fade out, pretty neat. Let's look at, so another one is slide. Another one we can do, so let's go to our jQuery. So these are our event handlers again. So instead of fading out, let's slide up. We're going to use the slide up function. Okay, so we can just use that with no parameters and just use the default. So we'll refresh. And now let's click our hide button, and there we go, slide up. And now if we click show, it'll fade back in. So we could slide things up, slide things down, fade things in, fade things out. Let's instead of fade in, let's slide down. Okay. So we'll slide up, and now we're going to slowly slide down, nice and slow. Okay, so now we're really starting to see the power of JavaScript. Now, in the old days, you would have had to do a lot of programming in JavaScript, and you would have had to do a lot of CSS manipulation. And, you know, I just showed you this demo in 5 minutes, right? And you're able to start using it. So, you know, again, the reason why we're using jQuery instead of raw JavaScript, I mean, you could, right? You could use raw JavaScript, but look how fast I was able to do this and mock up this demo application in almost no time. And you know, this is going to work. So let's try this in Explorer. Okay, it's going to work the same way. Oh, what happened here? Allow blocked content. Okay, so we can hide, show, right? And it's going to work in all of our browsers, in Firefox and all of that stuff. Okay, so jQuery has really helped us. You know, it makes it easy, so much easier to create interactive content on our web page. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here just to break things up a little bit, and then I'm going to continue and show you how to do form validation using jQuery instead of the silly alert boxes that we've been using so far. Okay, so back in a minute.